Facebook.
Good to see you over there, by the way.
All right, everybody, are we good? All right. I'm calling to order our Mount Shasta Planning Commission special meeting, Tuesday, September 27, 2022. And next we're going to have
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call, please.
Were you
Roll
taking
call.
a roll?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear. I lost a lot of hearing in this ear. Present.
Commissioner Boyinger,
Present?
Commissioner Pardee,
Here.
Commissioner Higuera,
Here.
Commissioner McDowell,
Here.
Chair Findley.
Here. Thank you. So we really only have one agenda item this evening, and that is going to be a review of our draft walk, bike, ride, mobility plan. And we have Jeff Knowles here from Alta Planning to take us through it. Jeff Knowles is somewhere.
I'm on the screen. Hello.
There we go.
All right, let me get adjusted. Thank you all. Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I'm excited to be here today to share with you what's a milestone in the life of this project, which is we have a public draft plan ready for review. And so I've got a brief presentation to walk you through what's in this draft plan. Of course, you've seen it multiple times and provided excellent feedback and direction to us. And so our job tonight is, this is an information item. We're here to collect your feedback and also to let members of the public know that this document is available on the project website at walkbikeridemountshasta.com, and it'll be available for public comment up through October 9th. So let me take it away, show you the presentation, and then we'll turn it back up to the chair and to these members to ask clarifying questions of me or to provide their feedback. Okay. So my introduction, my overview today is give you a quick introduction. I'm going to walk through the chapters. That's how I've arranged the presentation. So it really walks you through what I think are the key contents and the key takeaways from each chapter. There's an introduction of the vision statement for active transportation in Mount Shasta. Chapter 3 is community voice. That's really an overview of all the community engagement that we conducted, getting around Mount Shasta today, existing conditions and needs analysis. Mount Shasta's transportation future is the recommendations. And then where do we start? It's a chapter about prioritization and about finding the funding to implement this plan. And then there are several appendices that help back up the document itself. So chapter 1, the introduction, it walks through the planning process. The plan is built on 4 different phases of work. The first was listen and learn, where we were collecting a lot of data in the field, analyzing the data, and also just talking to people about their needs for walking, biking, rolling, taking transit, using wheelchairs. Phase 2 was building consensus. This is where we had our first round of draft projects, getting feedback on those and policy changes and programs. We've refined that, and now we're finally in phase 4, where we've got this draft document pulled together for public review and then hopeful city council review and adoption. In the first chapter, we talked about how this plan relates to other plans, such as the general plan and county plans. We also looked at lessons from other peer cities that are like Mount Shasta, have a robust tourism economy, and draw some recommendations out of what they've been doing for transportation. And then, let's see. And then we kind of transitioned to chapter 2, which is the vision statement. This is something that we've crafted with members of the public, with the technical advisory committee that we had running throughout the life of this project. There are goals and actions. The first is the vision statement. I'll read that, and then we can kind of get into the goals and actions. But the vision is that surrounded by immense natural beauty and recreational amenities, the City of Mount Shasta provides sustainable transportation options that make it easy to live a healthy lifestyle. Residents and visitors of all ages, incomes, and ability levels can easily get from home to their destination by walking, biking, or rolling on a comfortable and connected active transportation network of sidewalks, bikeways, and trails. So to support that vision, there are several goals. Safe and comfortable. Active modes of transportation are safer and more comfortable for people of all ages, abilities, and income levels and backgrounds to get where they need to go. Connected. The city has connected and convenient transportation infrastructure, particularly for people walking, biking, or rolling and biking. Fun. On-street active transportation facilities seamlessly connect to Lake Siskiyou, City Park, Shasta Park, the Gateway Trail Network, and other outdoor recreation destinations. In addition, education and encouragement campaigns create fun activities to grow the city's bicycling and walking culture. Sustainable. Mount Shasta's transportation network is as resilient as possible to extreme weather, including fire, heavy snow, and flooding. Economically viable. In addition to meeting the needs of year-round residents, the transportation network serves tourists and local businesses. Innovative. Mount Shasta's transportation system embraces design best practices and new technology such as e-bikes, electric vehicles, and downtown shuttles. Usable. The city's transportation network is well maintained. A lot of that information came directly from the community, from voices we heard through surveys, through public meetings, through bike tours. And so the chapter 3 is really documenting all of that outreach that we conducted. So in terms of in-person engagement, we had focus groups that centered around people who bike today, so kind of your active biking community. We had a business leaders luncheon at the lodge. We had a focus group with parents and caregivers to talk about school-age children and how they get to and from school. And we had a meeting with older adults, an interview with them as well at the senior center. We did mobile outreach, so 8 different events. We had tables set up to meet people at the farmer's market, at Berryvale, at Ray's, and at concerts in the park. We had a community workshop in the first phase where 20 people came. This is a picture of that right here in the center. And we also had several technical advisory committee meetings. We developed a project website and a virtual open house. We had 408 people take that survey, and we had a public input web map. 40 people participated and left 289 comments or interactions. It was promoted through yard signs, through sidewalk decals, stickers, through social media, the city's own channels. We had a listserv where we were collecting people's subscriber emails. We had 6 emails that went out. And we also sent out postcards to every residence and business address that's within the study area, so even beyond the city's boundaries. We also had paid social media ads. So quite a bit of effort to make sure that this went out. Also went out with bilingual flyers to every school-aged children in Mount Shasta. In the phase 2, we had another round of virtual open house. 93 people participated in that. An online community workshop. Community organization interviews. We held 6 of those. Those were with System Middle School, Mount Shasta Community Resource Center, Mount Shasta Parks and Recreation District, Northern United Charter School, Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee, and the Great Northern Services. And then phase 3, the final recommendations and review. We had a public meeting where we had 13 comment cards filled out and 22 people attended that. And that was over the summer in June. So some of the key takeaways with all that good input, what we heard from people was that they want to walk and bike more frequently, drive less than they currently do. Infrastructure gaps are a big barrier to walking and biking for transportation. That's why I think it's more convenient for people to choose to drive, even for short trips. You want better infrastructure for walking and biking along roadways. Safety is critical no matter how you get around, whether you're driving, taking stage transit, or walking or biking. Business owners and community leaders are interested in the economic benefits of a more walkable, less congested downtown. A changing climate makes these changes increasingly important. Families and parents want better connections to schools, parks, trailheads, and other destinations. And we got a lot of comments, just general appreciation for the planning process of Mount Shasta Mobility Plan. Some of the quotes that we pulled out: people walking and riding to and through our community makes it a more vibrant, healthy town. Somebody else said, we are a tourist town. We need to have elements that attract tourists and keep them wanting to return for more. If we had safe bike paths connecting featured areas and businesses, I'd be very proud to live in such a place. Chapter 4 is all of the analysis we conducted about getting around town today, kind of current behaviors, current infrastructure that you have in place. And so we ran quite a bit of a series of analyses. We looked at your current bike infrastructure. So where are there bike facilities today? What is your pedestrian infrastructure? We categorized all of your sidewalks, where they exist and their widths. We also had a team that went out and inventoried sidewalk cracks, gaps in the network. We looked at all of your crossing infrastructure for sidewalks, for crosswalk markings. All that's now collected. We conducted active trip potential to understand where people using their cell phone data, where people are taking short trips or long trips. And we found out that most people that are going to visit destinations in downtown are making 1 or 2 mile trips between home. And so these are great opportunities to convert some of those car trips to walking or bicycling. We looked at safety and collision, where people are getting into collisions, whether they're car to car or car to people walking or biking, where those are occurring more severely and more frequently. We looked at level of traffic stress. So that's the level of comfort for walking and bicycling on your roads, connectivity to major destinations, social vulnerability and risk. So where are low-income people living in relation to some of these destinations, and what's their transportation options to get to and from work. We looked at hazards as well. So we really went pretty deep into ingress and egress into neighborhoods to make sure that there are 2 points, 2 means of escape, and identified areas that didn't have those, neighborhoods that were cul-de-saced off and could be at risk for maybe wildfire. And so we've built that into our recommendations. And then we also did an inventory of transit, looking at transit bus stops. Some of the key takeaways that we identified in the plan, there's a lot of opportunity to convert some of those car trips to sustainable transportation trips, reducing your vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. Sidewalk gaps are common outside of the downtown, but you have a pretty good, robust network in town. Improving crossings will be key, something we heard pretty clearly. Connecting West Mount Shasta and East Mount Shasta across I-5, that's a major barrier that was identified. And that transit service has substantial gaps in terms of the times it's offered, and maybe also the network coverage. So chapter 5 really devotes itself to introducing what the projects are, and then chapter 6 is prioritization. Where do we start? How do we actually accomplish these recommendations? So chapter 5, we talk about bikeway facility options and recommendations principles. Areas of focus include separated bikeways, bike boulevards in town, trails and trail studies as major spines in your walking and biking network, and then neighborhood connectors. For the pedestrian network recommendations, areas of focus include citywide sidewalk infill and maintenance programs, so a policy for the city to consider, updating Mount Shasta's land development regulations so that as properties are developed, sidewalks go in a way that meets your standards, and then creating a sidewalk inventory and asset management system. Intersection recommendations, also sometimes we call them spot improvements, priority corridors and intersections. Mount Shasta Boulevard, Chestnut Street, one-way conversion was something else we looked at pretty closely. In chapter 6, we ran through all the projects, all the infrastructure projects through a sorting system. We wanted to match projects that have a high impact with a low cost. We also heard that pretty clearly through all of our outreach, is that folks do not want to see this plan sit on a shelf and collect dust. So what we've done is categorized every project into 4 different buckets. If it's a high impact project and it's also very easy to do, high feasibility, so it means low cost, the city could do it maybe with its own means, that's a high priority project. Projects that are very impactful but may take additional study or a grant to accomplish or coordination with other jurisdictions is a long-term project. Very important, but it's going to take some time to accomplish. Projects that are low benefit but easy to accomplish are opportunities. So this could be when the city's repaving streets, or when a development happens, you can add these projects to other opportunities that are happening simultaneously. And then there are projects that are low impact and low priority. And we've added these here to make sure that we have a full wish list of possibilities, but these are the ones that maybe you want to push down on the priority list. The way that we scored them were based off this criteria that we also got input from the Technical Advisory Committee about and the public. Collision reduction safety really rose to the top as the most important. So this was 4 points available for projects that really addressed areas where bicycle and pedestrians were involved in collisions. Connectivity, 3 points possible for projects that improve direct connections to transit, to school campuses, and to trailheads. A comfortable network, this is based off of that level of traffic stress analysis. So projects that resolve really stressful areas to bike, such as Mount Shasta Boulevard, there are bike lanes there, but what we heard from people is that most people just aren't comfortable going out there and bicycling, and they want either opportunities to bike somewhere else, like on a bike boulevard, or more separation, physical separation. So projects like that would score high. Environmental sustainability, potential to convert more driving trips to walking and biking, and thus reduce vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. Those were projects that were located within that active trip potential analysis. So areas that were started and ended close to the downtown are the ones that had the highest potential for converting those trips. And then community interest. We did add in points for ones where we were getting good community consensus that this is something that the community wanted to see. So the top 10 most frequently prioritized projects that the community are given 4 points, and then the top 11 to 50 are 2 points. In the project feasibility, the project readiness was scored by complexity. So things like pavement markings that require just paint receive high project readiness scores, and also studies receive high project readiness scores. Project locations that are on existing city property also receive high feasibility scores, but ones that require coordination with the county or other private jurisdictions or private entities are low feasibility. So what does all this mean, right? So in terms of sidewalk recommendations, this is the full list of recommendations. You can see here that a lot of them revolve around arterials and major streets that connect up on Mount Shasta Boulevard, north and south. The downtown, you've got pretty good connectivity, but kind of connecting also the neighborhoods into your downtown core. There are also some gaps in the residential areas, but we want to deal with that through a citywide policy. So in terms of priorities for sidewalks, Mount Shasta north and south, gaps on Lake Street, on Rockefeller Drive, on Alma Street, and on Jesse Street are the high priority sidewalk projects to fill in. In terms of crossing improvements, we had 46 intersection improvements were recommended. These include new and upgraded crosswalks, crossing beacons, like a picture you can see here is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon where there's no signal, but somebody would come up, press a button, and it would light up the beacon to alert motorists to yield and give them the opportunity to cross. Curb extensions, which you've got some examples of that in the city already, and then curb ramps, so making it ADA compliant. So these 46 locations include those, different intersection improvements. And in terms of the high priority locations, the 3 high priority locations are at Mount Shasta Boulevard and Smith Street. It's upgrading a crosswalk to high visibility crosswalk, so that's that ladder style. Advanced pedestrian yield markings and additional signage. The second priority location is at Hatchery Lane and the I-5 on-ramp, adding 1 high visibility crosswalk and across the I-5 ramp. And then, I'm sorry, it was I guess it's on the west side of the I-5 ramp, so I guess on and off. And then number 24, Pine and Castle, adding a crosswalk on Castle. So those are the 3 that were high priority, low cost, easy to accomplish, it rose to the top. In terms of bikeways, this is the bikeway network, which looks like kind of like a bowl of spaghetti right now, but I'll break this down for the commission. It includes Class 1 shared use paths. Those are trails that can be used for people walking or bicycling completely off-street. There are bicycle lanes, so a dedicated space marked by paint for people bicycling, separated from traffic. And then bike boulevards are Class 3s. These are shown in purple, and these are where people will mix with traffic, but we've relegated these to low volume, low speed residential streets. And bike boulevards are also indicated by having traffic calming if the street volumes or speeds feel too high, to add additional comfort, and additional signage and pavement markings just to help people find their way through the street network to get to their destinations. So in colors, green is shared use path, blue is bike boulevards, and purple is the bike lanes are blue, bike boulevards are purple. There's also Class 4 separated bikeways. These are located, we've got two main spines of these separated bikeways. And this is an image to the left that shows one version of what a separated bikeway could look like. Here you can see that you have the sidewalk, and then you have the bicycle facility, the bikeway, and then you have it separated from moving traffic by these curb stops and parked cars. And so this is something that the city could consider on these two main spines, what we're calling the Crosstown Connector, which would connect from private school on Lassen Lane, along Pine Street, connecting the hospital and medical services facilities, then up Alma to connect to the Sisson Middle School, and then across to the high school on Rockefeller, and getting all the way to the Shasta East Park. So that's one opportunity. And then the second one was on Mount Shasta Boulevard, really converting the bike lane that you have and just flip-flopping parking for the bikeway. So this is something that is being considered. It's something that fits, it's feasible. There is consideration for maintaining these, so street sweeping and also snow removal. What's good about this is, as you can see here, there's ample room for snow storage, also in that buffer space. I wanted to point out one particular area of focus for the Bike Boulevard network is the Midtown Greenway, shown here in this teal color, and also connections to planned north and south bikeways that would connect to the Midtown Greenway and connect Dunsmuir up to Weed. So the portion in the middle is kind of a high priority segment, the Midtown Greenway, as an alternative to people biking on Mount Shasta Boulevard. So in terms of priorities, the Gateway Trails Connector is a priority. This one is shown here. It's a connection that goes up from Rockefeller. Next priority is the Headwaters to Lake and the Great Shasta Rail Trail Studies. So this one you can see here is what we're calling Headwaters to Lake. It's a trail corridor that's being studied and proposed in the Mount Shasta Park and Rec District Master Plan. It's something that we want to carry forward and be consistent with that. So this is something that will be a further study to figure out right-of-way, ownership, all the engineering that would need to happen to accomplish this as a main spine, north-south spine. And the Great Shasta Rail Trail is a study to look at the abandoned right-of-way on the former railroad. This is part of a bigger study that's happening around Mcleod, heading out to Bernie. And so this would help you connect into Mcleod on this right-of-way. Midtown Greenway, which I mentioned before, connects kind of through the heart of town and provides that alternative to Mount Shasta Boulevard. The Lake Street Connector, this is opportunity for a bikeway on Lake Street, a longer Lake Street bikeway connector. Mill and Maple Bikeway, it's kind of the bike boulevard connection that's on the west side of Mount Shasta Boulevard, so going through a residential neighborhood. This is also a corridor we heard a lot from people that wanted to see some traffic calming. There's also a connector, a cut through for a lot of traffic. And so this would be an opportunity to do some traffic calming. The Pine Street Connector, Ream Avenue Bikeway, important for helping people connect over to WA Bar and Old Stage and also Lake Siskiyou. And then the Washington Drive Bikeway. So another opportunity to add bike facilities on Washington Drive. So this is a map showing kind of all the high priority projects, and then the long-term projects are dashed. Additional recommendations, we've got neighborhood connectors, and if you recall, that's where I was talking about those cul-de-sac streets that might be an issue for emergency vehicle access or fleeing during a fire for emergency access, for emergency evacuation routes. Those have been identified as potential ways that we can kind of cut through those cul-de-sacs. People could walk or bike them, or emergency vehicles could have better access. So those are called out in recommendations, those trail studies I mentioned before. And then there are a number of program and policy recommendations around encouraging safe routes to school participation and collaboration, wayfinding, open streets events, data collection and reporting, becoming a bike-friendly community, which is a process that the city could go through to be recognized as a bike-friendly community, and then transportation demand management. So thinking about non-infrastructure behavior changes and incentives to get people to consider walking or biking instead of driving. Transit recommendations include microtransit options, signing all the stops, posting the bus schedules at all stops, and considering additional seating, those sim seats, which you can attach right to the bus stop pole, providing lighting at the shopping center stop. So those are recommendations for different stops. There's also the short range transportation plan the county has produced that goes into changes that the stage could adopt for improved transit frequency and changing the routes. So what's all this going to cost? In terms of the bikeway network, the total cost for 53 miles of additional bikeways is $12.6 million. In terms of the high priority, you get 16, close to 17 miles of your bikeway network accomplished for about $1 million. For sidewalks, you have 4.2 miles of sidewalk gaps to fill in at a cost of just shy of $2 million. So that first long-term projects are 2.5 miles at 1.1 million. And spot improvements, crossing improvements, there are 46 of those at a cost of $2.4 million total. Your first round, your high priority projects, can be accomplished for $22,000. Your next slate of projects, 19 of those for about $1.3 million. We tried to keep all of these around $1 million in terms of your first high priority or your long terms. That's a good typical size of a grant application. And so we wanted to make sure that this was doable. And so the last thing that we did was think about funding sources, whether that can come internally from assessment districts or impact fees, or externally from state and federal grant programs. Chapter 6 not only includes a list of those funding sources, but also digs into next steps. And so we've identified specific tasks and the responsibilities for who would be responsible for completing these tasks, and also a timeline for them. So the first phase we have are the next 1 to 5 years. Task 1 is to create a walk, bike, ride Mount Shasta implementation committee that meets on a quarterly basis to review opportunities and progress for accomplishing the plan. Task 2 is to submit 2 applications this fall to the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program to fund the Mount Shasta Boulevard and Chestnut Streetscape Community Redesign process. That's focused on the discussion around converting Mount Shasta Boulevard and Chestnut to a one-way couplet. Additional analysis and design and community input would definitely be needed, and so funding would be required to move that forward. And the second thing is the Great Shasta Rail Trail and Headwaters to Lake Trail studies. Task 3 is to complete the State Transportation Improvement Program amendment for adding Class 2 bikeways to the funded Lake Street Roadway Reconstruction project. So there's already funding identified for this project. It's just amending it to take advantage of the fact that you can add bikeways for a relatively low cost. Task 4 is to submit a Highway Safety Improvement Program application for improvements at Mount Shasta Boulevard, Chestnut Street, Mcleod Avenue. So that's a grant program. Task 5 is to submit CRRSAA and RSTP request for $60,000. This is funding that's controlled by the Siskiyou County Local Transportation Commission to fund $60,000 to fund a citywide walking and biking wayfinding program. Task 6 is to apply to the Active Transportation Program, which is a state program, and other external grant sources to fund high priority projects, quick build projects using low cost materials, and wayfinding fabrication at installation. Task 7, staff should present a sidewalk infill policy proposal and updated sidewalk standard details to council for their review and hopeful adoption. Task 8, staff should present a business plan for installing metered parking in downtown. 9, staff should help develop the Siskiyou County Active Transportation Plan, which will be starting later this fall. And then task 10, staff will collaborate with local public charter schools and community organizations to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety by implementing education programs and promotional events. A lot of these are about acquiring additional funding, and I just want to preface that this is all really dependent on the city council and city staff having the resources and capacity to accomplish this. So it's really dedicating that time to do this. In terms of the next 6 to 10 years, it's really looking at those funding the short-term projects in the 2021 Regional Transportation Plan, continuing to apply for federal, county, state, federal grant sources, continuing to condition developers with installing sidewalks and trails where required, in alignment with the plan, and updating the plan, revisiting it and updating every 10 years. The last slide is just talking about the appendices. We have all of the bikeway improvements with much more detail than I presented here and their costs. Same with pedestrian network improvements, the sidewalks and your intersections, along with all the cost assumptions that go into that. So in terms of schedule, the public draft period opened on September 14th. Here we are today at the Planning Commission meeting. We will have a technical advisory committee meeting tomorrow, and then we will close the public comment period on October 9th. We'll go to council as an information item on the 10th to collect feedback. We will then take all the feedback we received from Planning Commission, the public, council, from the TAC, and incorporate that feedback into a final draft, which we'll then take back to council for, hopefully for their action of adoption on October 24th. With that, I'm gonna turn things back to you, Chair, and entertain any questions or record any feedback that you may have for me and my team.
Thank you. That was quick, through a lot of material. So I'm going to start with Planning Commissioner comments and questions. Then I'm going to open it up to the public. Then we'll come back if commissioners have any additional questions. And that's the plan. So do you want to start, Paul?
I think I'll wait till after the public comment because I have some comments rather than questions. So
Okay.
I'll wait till after public comment.
Okay, Lon?
Well, my first question is, when were these values last calculated, or when were they calculated, the costs?
Is this like for inflationary considerations?
So when were the costs calculated?
I want to know when they were calculated.
They were calculated several weeks ago based off of the most recent bids that we've gotten from various contracts that we help other jurisdictions with. So they're recent, but they also will inflate over time. So they're the best case for now, and they're going to go up and up.
So what you may have anticipated my next question is, by the time we start doing any of this, what can we expect those costs to have increased by?
Well, it really depends on how quickly we can get things under contract. A lot of these are going to require additional engineering study and more detailed cost estimates. So this is good enough, I think, for applying for grants over the next couple of years, and you may want to add an inflation number to that. But many of them will require an additional level of design, and at that point, you can get even further down into the weeds about what's required for the cost estimates.
That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Lon. Alan?
In terms of making comments to the current plan, what format is set up for the planning commissioners to make to have more detailed study of the report and provide more detailed comments? Is there like a Bluebeam session we can join, or mark up a PDF or something like that? The black and white copies that we receive are small and kind of hard to understand.
That's a good question. I'd like to share my screen again. I'll show you. If you go to walkbikerideMountShasta.com, which is the project website,
And there's an opportunity on that website, and we've been provided
let me share my screen. I'm going to walk you through a quick tutorial about how that works. Okay, can everybody see my screen again?
Yes.
So this is what happens when you type in walkbikerideMountShasta.com. It's our kind of our landing page, and there's a banner that we've added here about check out the full mobility plan. If you click that, here's a version of the plan itself, and people are already commenting on this. This is a PDF comment tool, and you can click Get Started here.
Okay.
And it'll give you a quick tutorial about adding your own comments.
Great.
And now you're active. So you can read this plan. You can see I'm scrolling down, kind of you get the whole plan here, or you can add your own comment here. And whenever you want to, you can click, and you have the option, it's not required, you can add your name and your comment. I don't like this color green, or this is in the wrong place, or whatever. You can submit it there, and then people can see each other's comments. And so I can toggle comments on and off. And also, if you don't want to participate this way of reading it on the screen, you could click over here where it says download. And then you can download a PDF of it. And if you'd like to print it out yourself or just read it in a different format, you can do it that way. But this is an easy way for you to provide comments directly to all of us. This is what the public is doing right now. We've already received dozens of comments on the plan.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I like a lot of the ideas you've come up with. We're hearing some pushback definitely on parking meters. I know we're not wanting to get into the weeds on that stuff right now as far as official comments, but that's what I've heard. One of the more, just physically, that I'm concerned about, if we're really going to be looking at a one-way loop, where's the east end of that thing, or where's the one down at the end there? Where Chestnut and Mount Shasta come together, how's that going to happen? But anyway, that's more detail than we'll, unless have you guys studied that?
We're talking the south end.
Yes, the south end.
Well, it already wise.
Pardon?
It already wise in front of block.
I know it wise.
But
So
How
it
do
just-
you loop? Oh,
if you wanted to loop back around.
yeah, you wanted to go back up Chestnut. Anyway, it'll require more study, I think.
Take out that island and
It's
turn.
hugely expensive, so they didn't, it's kind of like not even on the chart. The one-way street thing.
Okay,
No, that was
yeah.
to apply for it for this fall.
You're correct. Additional study would be required, although we have, if the city didn't want to move forward on a one-way design phase for Mount Shasta Boulevard and Chestnut, we do have recommendations for improving that intersection, which has been cited by everyone.
Did you say you're not planning on going forward with the one-way loop, or you?
If the city, it's up to city council's discussion and their decision.
I see.
So they would need to approve that and direct staff to go after funding to move that forward.
And then if that were the case, would that be taken out of this report, out of this plan as an option?
It would take it further.
No, if they decided not to do the one-way loop, would it appear in this plan still? If city council decides not to do it, we're not doing that.
If they told us to remove it from the draft plan, we'd remove it before adoption.
Gotcha.
If they decide after adoption, then this plan would just be out of date. And when the city
Gotcha.
goes to update this plan in 10 years, they would fix it then.
Okay. I would also like more study and more discussion about how snow removal and some of these improvements might physically work on the ground. Those curbs get torn up around here just with snow removal as they are, fixed curbs. So I know there's some ideas out there. It'd be nice if some of that was discussed when we start talking about pedestrian refuges and things like that. It would be a real challenge here at times.
Yeah, there is a section devoted exclusively to that in the plan.
Excellent. I'll read that part.
Which I thought I went through the plan, I don't recall. Can you just point us there real
Yeah,
quick?
I looked as well and didn't find it, but I trust that it's there somewhere.
So let's see. On page 69, there is a section on maintenance and snow removal needs. So I can share my screen again that way, that might be helpful. So can everybody see? This is talking about the class 4 separated bikeways, and I can zoom in. I think this is probably hard to read.
So it looks like my quick skim has to do with being able to remove them during snowplow operations or just during the winter season. Is that part of it?
So I'll read. Select physical buffers that are snow plow compatible, i.e. has a continuous edge, such as bolt-down concrete curb stops, K-rail, or planted buffer strip with poured-in-place concrete. That's something that the city could consider as a kind of compatible, connecting frequent maintenance to avoid roadway hazards such as potholes and debris, maintaining posts, bollards, or other physical barriers, refresh striping, repair, some managed faded signage. That could be there. So there's more. I think that working with Public Works would have to figure out what they wanted to do. They could, if you wanted to use posts, like posts could be removed each season, but that's just a level of labor involved in installing those and reinstalling those. But that's an option. Some communities do that as well. But from what we've heard, kind of talking with the city staff, is that the snow plows, they need an edge to put their plow blade against, and that way they can find kind of where they need to plow. And so something that has a continuous edge is what we're looking for. So it could be something like K-rail, or if these concrete curb stops get ripped up, maybe that's something that we need to think about, something more substantial.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The bolt-down concrete curbs, at least in my experience, they do get ripped up.
Yep.
So you're right, they need a continuous curb, that sort of thing. I'm glad there's something specific to that. There are going to be some specific areas where it's problematic as well. Up by the high school, there's a few areas where there'll be some problems. So anyway, further study. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Belinda?
There was the conversation about the class 4 up Alma. Isn't that what the class 4 bike, one of the main ones that you wanted to do? I'm trying to figure out, is there enough room to have those class 4s and the two roads that you wanted to do them, and on both sides with parking? It seems to me that it would be pretty narrow with parking. You'd almost eliminate the parking. Or is it going to be parking on just one side of the street? That's not quite clear to me. But yeah. And the other one was, I didn't think there was enough priority in this about the Mcleod and Mount Shasta Boulevard Fiasco intersection and the Berryvale Crosswalk area, as well as the Seven Sons, which is another terrible intersection because it's not square. It's all kind of canted weird. And those, I think, should be blinking high priority crosswalks because they're both used in a tremendous amount. And they have both of them have traffic issues with either cars screaming down the road or around a corner that's blind, and it's too late at that point when they come screaming around the corners to the crosswalks. But that Mcleod one is just, it's the one-way thing, but if we can't afford to do a one-way situation, then we should be addressing it as a priority because it's so dangerous, in my opinion, I guess. Is there been any conversation about Highway 89 and Mount Shasta Boulevard, I guess that, or, you know, how that goes across? I mean, how do you cross? I don't see much in here about that. That's the only thing that makes a loop in our whole area is if you go across Highway 89 on a bicycle or electric anything. Is there, do you know much about that? I know it's a real, Caltrans is not real cooperative with that one.
Yeah, I can look up real quickly. I believe we do have recommendations at that location. I don't think it's in the prioritization criteria how we've identified it, since there aren't a lot of nearby destinations. I don't think it's scored as highly, but I believe we have some improvements for that area.
Okay. I'd like to,
I don't recall seeing it.
not hardly anything. There was something in there, but nothing that really said,
It's not on here, at least, because
Yeah, it's
the
not on the
map,
maps.
the map actually doesn't include that intersection. The map is cut off just north of that intersection,
But-
so it's not on there.
Pre-COVID, wasn't Caltrans supposed to be doing a big project down there and putting a under freeway passage there, similar to like when you're coming into Mcleod?
well, I
There was
wrote a letter.
Do you remember
conversation
that
maybe
in one of our
10-ish
meetings?
10 years ago.
And they told me,
10
forget
year-
it. It
yeah.
wasn't, it was like, nah.
Yeah,
No,
the
this was
county,
like 2019.
oh, that recently.
It was
That I
in
don't
one of our
recall.
meetings that we
It would be,
discussed
it would be nice to know more about that. I think that's something that should be.
It's missing from the map.
Yeah, it's missing. I like the eliminate the double yellow lines, old stage, everywhere. That should just be something, because I have been on the road where somebody has come along and they go, you're not supposed to cross the double yellow line. And so they come within 2 inches of you because they won't cross the double yellow line to not run into you. So that's something that, yes, great, that's good. I love that. And the cul-de-sac, you know, making it so that there's passageways from cul-de-sac to the next area, that emergency vehicles and pedestrians can take shortcuts, which is so much fun to do. And let's see, the only other one, a lot of comments about shuttles for the elderly or people that lack mobility. And you mentioned that in here, but I don't see it on any of the lists of things to do. And it may be that it's not quite this plan. It might be a transportation plan of some other form, but it would be, a lot of people kind of all ages would like to have something, just a local shuttle that's quick. You can get from Berryvale to the shopping center to down to the banks, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know where that is. And my last comment, because I'm too much, I've been in Minnesota in the winter, and they get ticketed if they don't shovel their sidewalks and put salt on them. And I have no idea why this town, when a lot of people walk because they don't want to drive, but we have to walk in the street. And I don't understand why we do not require our citizens to hire or get somebody or do it themselves to shovel the sidewalks where there are sidewalks. It's just not happening. Property owners don't shovel it. And downtown Manchester Boulevard's bad. It's like some of it's shoveled and some of it's not, so that means people are walking out in the street. So that's a pet peeve, but it should be done. And in Minnesota, Minneapolis, oh my gosh, people are out there and they shovel it, and if they don't shovel theirs, their neighbor shovels theirs. So it's kind of a nice, friendly thing. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. Do you know where they put the berm in Minnesota?
The berm, well, most of a lot of their sidewalks have grass between the sidewalk and the street. But, I have to shovel, we have to shovel our sidewalks on Manchester Boulevard. There's no extra, and you just do it.
But the snow there is plowed to the middle instead of plowed onto the sidewalk.
Yes, and there are more modern ways of plowing than we do, which is to shovel it, to plow it all onto the sidewalks. There are more efficient ways, but we're
They do the center also.
They put it in the center.
we're
yeah.
stuck a little bit in an old paradigm there, I think.
Thank you, Belinda.
No, I don't have many comments. I'm just happy somebody's talking about the one-way streets and parking meters downtown finally. So,
Do you like parking meters downtown?
yeah.
Okay,
I don't think meters, I think more like a pay kiosk
yeah,
that accepts a credit card and you put a slip in your window. And then for people who live inside city limits or have 96067 zip codes, they get either a free meter or a very discounted pass for the year. I mean, if we're tourism, we might as well.
take advantage
Yeah.
of some of it.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Great, thank you. So I did have a number of questions in no particular order. Regarding seniors, and in your discussion about connectivity, you didn't include connectivity to senior housing, and I was wondering what your thoughts were about that?
I think that probably just an oversight among ours. We had a focus group talk with at the senior center, but not about senior housing as an important destination. So if there are areas of town that you don't think are covered by this network that need to be addressed, please let us know and we can revisit those, make sure that there are good recommendations that fit those.
Okay, you're going to write it down right now, because there's Eschaton, which is by the hospital, and then there's
So the
all-
hospital is covered by that Crosstown Connector
Okay, so
recommendation.
Eschaton is north of that, so, but yeah, so that's part of it. And then there's some housing at kind of near Kenneth Way and Ivy meet, and am I missing any?
The KOA area.
The KOA area, Alta Vista. So I think, because we did get some interest from some of the public comments we received about mobility for seniors, and part of that is the, having a shuttle that would work, but I think if we considered them and made it an important connectivity piece to include local senior areas, that would be something I'd like to see added to the draft. I had a question about, on our B to Birch, our little Safe Routes to Schools funded Class 1, that you don't show it crossing Lake Street at Birch, but you move the crossing farther west, and I was wondering about the thinking on that.
Give me 1 second to pull it up here.
Do you know this area I'm talking about, off of Lake Street? So if you go at the intersection of Birch and Lake Street, and you go south, east. Anyway, I mean, I don't want this to be too cumbersome or time-consuming.
No, I'm familiar with it. I'm just trying to pull it up so we can all see it, the map together.
Okay.
It might just be better if I just got the PDF open instead of trying to operate it on the screen here. So, all right, I've got the page. It's page 75, I think, is where probably might be a way we can.
Maybe I should have page references on this.
Okay, I've got a good zoom in. I'm going to share my screen now. Thanks for bearing with. Okay. Okay.
Oh, so on that one it does. On another one I saw it goes, I think, well, Orem, it says Orem right on top of the B to Birch
It
connector.
must be a bad label. I'm zoomed in at pretty high. This is 200%. So maybe the Orem is creating an issue there.
Oh, actually, B Street, no, that's not true. It doesn't even show the B to Birch Street connector there. So you are familiar with our Beta Birch Street Class 1?
And that's, it's class 1, so we're not showing it on this map, so it should be existing. We're taking advantage of that existing facility. And that would be in the Midtown Greenway. I think, let's see here. So that's kind of filling in the gap to take advantage and leverage that opportunity.
Right, so is it part of the Greenway then? That's what I couldn't figure out, if it's included as part of the Greenway Trail or how it's incorporated into the plan.
There we go. There we go. This map is probably better.
Right there.
Okay, yeah, there. So that's, so
Is
if,
this, we're taking advantage of an existing facility to make those connections, make that work. Is that, am I showing this correctly on the map?
well, the map isn't quite correct. So the Beta Birch, instead, where it goes from purple to green on B Street, so the part that's going northwest, southeast, that is correct, more or less. But then where you have it going, heading to the southwest, is that using an alley? I don't know what that is about, because we don't, right now that's, I think that might be an alley. Anyway, it looks a little bit unusual because, again, when we originally designed it, it was to go straight, and it is designed right now, currently, to go straight across Lake Street without making that dog leg going west, going southwest. Do you understand what does that make sense?
I want to make sure I got this right because you've raised that a couple times to us, and I keep thinking that I've got it correct, and it seems like I just don't.
It doesn't look correct now, or it's not how it was designed. As what's showing on your map is not how it was designed.
Okay. So.
Okay, we've got, Belinda's got a screenshot on her Google Maps to show you.
That's better.
So take me through, because
Okay, so you've.
what we wanted to do is take advantage of this alley, the Alder Street, which is, I think, a paper street connection.
Okay.
Down across at Alder, because then you could go up through to the entrance of the Sisson Meadow and use, Castle Street as a connection. So that was the idea there.
Okay.
But we could change it to,
Where we actually have a proper crosswalk because, right. And no, I'm not opposed. I didn't, often alleyways in town tend to turn into backyards. Funny how that works. So,
Way there.
no, I think this is a good catch. I think now we've gotten into this level of granular detail. So if it makes more sense to just drop the Alder connection and just keep it at Birch and cross people here, I'm okay with that change and making sure that's clarified.
well, I wouldn't mind another set of eyes looking at it. We've certainly had concerns about line of sight. I'm hoping maybe that there's going to be traffic calming. Maybe I saw that thing about lowering speed limits. I think that's lovely. But, so there are some, like I say, there are line of sight concerns at that existing crosswalk at Birch Street because of the topography. Because the crown of, as you crest the hill, you don't have good line of sight, which makes going to Alder Street have some appeal. And I don't know the feasibility of using that alleyway. Like I say, alleyways are backyards oftentimes, so that could have some, friction to create that.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you could look at
Good
that.
feedback. Yep, good feedback for us. Thank you.
Sure. So I would like to echo Belinda's concern about the Highway 89 Mount Shasta Boulevard crossing. It is a dangerous intersection. It connects to a bunch of people, and it's not on the map. So for cycling, for getting people out of their cars and into town, it seems like it's an important intersection that wasn't considered.
And there is a school there at this
And there's the
time.
school right there. Yeah, there at the south end of town.
Seventh-day Adventists still do school.
And there's a church. There's a lot of activity there that brings people in. And that intersection is really dicey unless you're very confident on
And
your
there's
bike.
it's a park and ride, which is
Oh, yeah,
also. like-
right. That's a good point. The park and ride is there. So if you could reconsider that. It shows the schools, but it doesn't show the intersection as a priority.
Problematic
Right.
intersection.
Yeah,
Yeah, getting across there's,
a bear. And
and traffic's fast.
it's not even fun in a car, honestly. Okay, you got notes on that?
Yeah, we have a recommendation for a Class 1 facility on Mount Shasta Boulevard in this section, and so I think what the thinking was that the intersection would be improved at the same time that that goes in, but it sounded like the feedback I'm getting is it should be a standalone crossing improvement regardless of a Class 1 happening or not.
Right, because if we don't get a Class 1, I still think it's important to address getting people from that neighborhood and then across over on Azalea. Like I say, it's a big feeder of a big neighborhood area that can use that and come into town.
Okay, good feedback.
It
Thank
also connects to the
you.
Gateway Trails.
Oh, Gateway Trails, so
The
that's,
Gateway Trails come down and cross 89 further up, too.
31.
oh, yeah, and then we ride back up. Right, because there's also the Gateway Trail system, which is a good segue, thank you. So there's two things, right, the gateways, there's some mountain biking trails that will dump you off and you would come back up and use that intersection. And the Gateway Phase 2 trails have a trailhead planned on city property at the south end of town, and I don't see any reference to that.
Okay, I'll look at that again. We received that from the Forest Service about their approved trailhead. So we can go sure and make sure that we've got that labeled.
Labeled, I don't think it's labeled. I looked for it and I didn't see it, and it's, yeah, it's not on there, and it would be, in the Roseburg.
Should be.
No, it's down by Roseburg, at the south end of town.
Or Gateway Park?
Or Gateway, Phase 2.
Oh,
Okay.
Gateway Phase 2 has one of the long trails, drops in south of the Opportunity Center. And there's no reference to that at all. And that's a big planning piece that, like I say, the Forest Service is chasing, and the Trail Association, this is part of their, NEPA's done, they're constructing trails, and it's a trail to nothing at this point unless, and the city, and we did talk about it. And when we had a planner on staff, it was part of the conversation. So I think that needs to be in there. Very good?
Good.
Okay. Next one is, at every Memorial Highway, you talk about a crosswalk, and I don't know if you were there when the kids are walking home or to school, but they flow across the length of that street segment. They're crossing up above, and they're crossing, but they just flow across there. They dart through traffic. So I was wondering, it seems like it needs a more serious treatment, and also I didn't see a reference to the Head Start program that's up there north of the high school, which also has no sidewalk to it.
So there is a protected intersection recommended at the intersection of Rockville and Everett Memorial.
Yeah, that's not where the flow happens. If you go north, they're coming in from Shasta.
Shasta Avenue.
So from Shasta Avenue, they're pouring in across the road, and they'll walk 20 yards down, they'll walk 100 yards down, and they just flow across that big wide space. So we need to protect the kids that are coming out of the neighborhood, out of Shasta Avenue and heading into the high school. And we need to protect families that are going to the Head Start program.
Got it. And so I think what could contribute or help that is the Class 4 separated bikeway that's recommended from Shasta Avenue all the way down to Rockfellow. So that would help with narrowing the street and with traffic calming and providing that connection. And then there's a bikeway recommendation, bike lanes north of Shasta Avenue all the way up to the Gateway Trailhead.
But I think we need a crosswalk.
Did you look at putting a crosswalk at Shasta Avenue where it tees into Everett Memorial?
I don't think so.
I think
That's a good one.
Somebody
Add that
should have,
one.
yeah, you've got to be there and watch the kids go home after school. It's a river.
Traffic's coming down pretty hot off of Everett Memorial too, so that's a
They're
speed
not
trap.
supposed to because it's a school zone.
No,
But that
yeah.
doesn't stop them.
And I've seen them set up, the sheriff set up there and try and catch people.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And so some kind of traffic calming at the top there to get them to slow down before they get to Shasta Avenue would help, so they can't.
They never should have flattened out the
That
railroad
railroad track.
area right
Well,
there.
it's better for the bike, I have to say.
So open.
Yeah, people, it's a speedway. It's a
encourages.
speedway. It's awful. And like I say, Shasta Avenue. Okay, so do you have that? Am I done? Are we good? We're going to treat that in some fashion and note the location and existence of, and also the sporting fields, people parking and going to the football games, to track. There's a lot going on up there. Okay, I noticed in your group of people on page 111 that you didn't include the Siskiyou Union High School District as a contributing. Yeah, I don't know if you realize we have two school districts, well, more than that, but the high school is a separate school district. I don't know if you were aware of that, and they aren't included in your list.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if this fits in there, but I know other libraries, you do mention bike repair, and I know that there are some libraries, public libraries provide bicycle repair tools as part of their offerings, and if you could maybe put that as a recommendation to consider?
Say that one again for me.
Bicycle repair tools for loan at the public library. If you could include that as a recommendation?
Sure. Yep.
Good. Chestnut. I had, I guess, an above average list, but that's it for me.
I have one thing. because
Okay,
of that.
Belinda has one more.
All very fair and excellent. So thank you. This is the type of feedback we're hoping to get tonight. So thank you.
Okay,
I had one thing, we're talking bikes, and a lot of signals don't recognize that the cyclists are there in that intersection, and a lot of intersections in some places have either changing it so that they're sensitive to bicycles or putting a bicycle button so that the cyclist can come up and press it and say, hey, I'm here. There may not be any cars, but I still want to go. So all of us that are really good legal riders don't have to go some other way.
That is a recommendation, spot improvement 22. And you can read about that on page 95.
Did you?
Adding bike detection at both signals.
Great.
Why don't we just get rid of the signals?
Huh?
Just get rid of the signals.
David wants to get rid of the signals.
Yeah.
Okay, are we good?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, commissioners will have another opportunity to ask more questions, give more input, but now I'd like to open it up to the public. And I see there's a few people are here this evening. I'm hoping you're planning to come and speak to us. Come up to the mic, let us know who you are, and we'll appreciate your input.
3 minutes.
Normally we do 3 minutes, so if you could please keep it.
Okay, start the time.
Kathy, can you manage the clock? Or those guys? Okay, lovely, thank you.
Francis Mangel, 736 Pine Ridge Avenue, Mount Shasta, 9260311. And gentlemen, the first thing, and ladies and gentlemen, the first thing I see is when I look at your one-ways and your meters proposals, I hope you realize that we are not Wairika. These proposals are signs of growth that you're making. They're not the creators of it. Actually, a lot of your proposals look to me, they're going to inhibit growth. Now, I can't walk downtown anymore, but I can drive my old car 2 miles, correct. The stage you had was never even near full. Great big bus, 1 or 2 people. BS, waste, I'm paying for that. I suggest that an on-call shuttle van would be much cheaper, maybe some Goodwill apprentice police persons. Parking meters are a huge waste, and they never generate enough money to pay for themselves, even in some of the moderate-sized towns. And I've never seen them pay for themselves in small towns. And I'm 75. No, they don't cause an increase in customers, and the specialty shops downtown aren't going to really be generating. Those things come and go on a 5-year basis all the time. There's no mass appeal for that kind of thing. And they regularly go broke, and there they go, and somebody else shows up. And tickets, that kind of pisses me off. So what we did, and what I see done a lot, you get tickets, you get parking meters out there, and what we do is we go to the malls, and to hell with downtown. We don't like that. Ski Village Drive is an easy fix. It's only 100 yards that way. You come down Ski Village Drive, then you got to go like that, like that, like that, and then you get to turn right or turn left. You could just go, and you're smooth groove out of town, and you don't have to go over that blind hump or see the blind traffic turn coming around the corner. Easy fix, easy done, easy do. That sounds like a high priority to me. Now, something that hasn't been mentioned much, just briefly here, but you need to pay attention to removal of hazard evergreen trees in town and explosively flammable evergreens in or near the city limits, especially the ones under our power lines and phone wires and the ones that have falling hazards over the top of them. We should replace them with native broadleaf trees or easy maintenance trees like Norway maples in the suburbs. We should require that these not be put under power lines, because global heating is real, it's persistent, it's getting worse, and we do not want to look like the weed mill fire here in Mount Shasta. This is easy, it's cheap, it enables safe evacuation.
Francis, thank you very much for your comments. Oh, so now we know what happens when the buzzer goes off. Who else would like to come to speak with us this evening? Come on up, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jerry Metz. I live in Mount Shasta. And you might have already seen my comments because I did send them to Kathy and they might have been forwarded to you. But I was a little bit surprised when I submitted that it went to Portland instead of to you folks. And I wanted you to hear. Anyway, my comments are that the plan is very heavily oriented in the direction of biking, walking, and hiking. And while those things are great, my feeling is that the majority of the community, particularly the large number of seniors in town, are not concerned so much with these plans and would not be involved in these solutions, not to mention that we have the potential of snowy, slushy streets for a significant part of the year when you're talking about walking and bicycling. But there is one area where I feel there is a problem and which very, very little of the plan addresses, and that is public transportation, as others have mentioned. There is a large portion of our citizens who are seniors, many of them no longer driving a car and certainly not riding bicycles. And for these people to get around town, let's say from the shopping center up to Berryvale, and then with a stop at Mount Shasta Supermarket, and then perhaps up the hill to their residence carrying heavy packages, is not possible on foot and certainly not on bike. I feel that a shuttle service at no cost or very, very low cost to the patrons is badly needed. The stage bus line, sorry to say, but I think is a joke. A huge bus using a lot of fuel and carrying 1 or 2 passengers seems like the height of craziness to me. A small fleet of mini buses or even little vans that would circulate, maybe 2 or 3, that would circulate constantly, up and down, back and forth, all throughout the neighborhoods, throughout the whole business, 7 days a week, throughout the business area would be a great idea. These small vehicles should in particular accommodate the senior/disability housing, such as Escaton, Alta Vista Manor, Hinckley, and Pine Street. While many features of the plan are wonderful, and I do congratulate and thank all of you for the effort that you have put into looking at this, I don't think that the one-way Shasta and Chestnut is a big problem, and parking meters, I think, are a solution for which there is not really a problem. This is a little tiny town. It's easy to get around, and encouraging people to drive less may make a lot of sense in an urban area, but here, where most of our customers for our businesses come from 3 or 4 miles outside of town, driving is really the only practical way. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Who else would like to come and speak? Oh, good.
I would also like to speak to, well, first of all, thank you for the plans.
Introduce yourself, please. Introduce yourself, please.
Mary St. Marie. I'd like to speak to the uniqueness of Mount Shasta. And I've been here for 47 years. And even though we're in a drought, I rarely, in the wintertime, and sometimes in the windy, cold fall days, and spring days, because spring can last, winter can go into spring, and winter can start before the end of fall. Rarely do I see the number of bikers that warrants turning this much into biker lanes. I love all the biker trails around here, all the hiking trails, all the things that we have. But we don't have the kind of climate that is calling forth huge numbers of bikers in the late fall, winter, and early spring. And as far as the meters, I would say this. It doesn't appear that they're for the benefit of the shoppers or the businesses. I feel they actually deter the people coming in to shop. And while Jerry spoke about the seniors, I would like to speak about the parents and the mothers with small children. They're not going to be riding bikes. They're not going to be walking. And they're probably not going to want to be hauling their children around on transits. They're going to want to drive down to Berryvale, Mount Shasta Super, Ray's, all the places that they go. So it feels like the plan is heavily weighted on getting rid of cars. And I just would like that to be considered, because I don't think that there's a problem with cars. There's a problem perhaps with the kind of fuel that we've been using, and all those things are changing. And we need to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing, I had 30 seconds left. Ashland, I'll use it up. Ashland does not have parking meters. It gets multi-thousands of people a year. It has wonderful, fantastic biking paths everywhere, and they seem to do fine with no meters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before time starts, can I ask a question?
Oh, well, that's not usually, well, it depends. It's usually not a back and forth. It's your opportunity to speak,
Okay.
and we give you 3 minutes. And please introduce yourself.
My name is Jeffrey Andrewley. I've been a community member for all my life. I have moved to other places. I graduated high school here, went to the United States Navy, and was called back in 2015 to take care of my grandfather, who just turned 98 yesterday. I've witnessed some things in Mount Shasta that I miss very much. When I came back in 2015, this town was totally different. Although I do believe there is some reason to address some traffic concerns and congestions in Mount Shasta, I think this is a complete waste of taxpayer money. I've lived in different countries. I've lived in the Bay Area, Santa Cruz, Calistoga, Carmel, San Jose, been to San Francisco, been to Berkeley. Not here, folks. What I'd like to see Mount Shasta turn into is the old mill coming back. I'd like to see $1.2 billion GDP come out of the county of Siskiyou again. And I'd like to be able to go downtown and buy a nice pair of boots or socks or underwear. And I'd like to have the Piedmont back again. Windsor's Drugs, J&J Clothing. Sad. I don't come into this town very often, and it's a shame. And I think by implementing something like this, a lot of locals are going to leave. So good luck to you and your plans for the city of Mount Shasta. But I thought I would take you down a little memory lane about what this community stood for back when I was a kid. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I see anyone else, but we might have some participants that will visit, come online. Okay. Go ahead, Johanna.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Let me just get to my little spot here. So I do like the fact that we're working on improvements and mobility in Mount Shasta. I think it's great that our #1 concern is safety, because I think, as a bike rider, and I've often ridden, over 20 miles to work before, safety is a huge concern. I totally agree with all the comments. Get rid of the empty, polluting buses and replace them with smaller vans that can accommodate seniors. Just like the study mentioned Breckenridge did and other cities did with the 6 free routes year-round, and include stops at the senior living facilities. I think that's useful. I have a bus stop in front of my home, and I see the empty bus, and it takes up energy, and it's noisy, and it's terrible. So I agree with all of that. And then on page 12, I wasn't sure what prioritize. It talked about infrastructure improvements. I wasn't exactly clear what specifically was being discussed there. Also on page 12, I would be totally okay with a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. As far as traffic calming by the high school on Pine Street, where we have a lot of speeding by the hospital, I would actually like to propose we put in speed camera boxes, because we can't really put in speed bumps because of the snow plows, and we don't have enough enforcement to do it, so I think a camera box would be good. I personally would not like to see a lot of extra blinking lights from from sidewalks and other traffic control devices. And I'd also like to see maybe an underpass at the railroad tracks by Alma or Lake, but I think Alma would be better for emergency egress and for recreation. On Pine Street, the separated walkway, when I mentioned this to Alta back in March, I did not include the curb part, the curb stop or whatever it's called. What I saw in Seattle was just the cars parked between the bike lane and the traffic. I think there's issues with snow removal, and I can tell you from experience that the snow plow hits the edge of the curbs, and I would love to see all the snow go to the middle, and maybe the city could put in snow flags on the outer edge of wherever they're plowing so they don't hit anything. And I just wanted to add no parking.
You know what? We really need to adhere to the 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay, who's next?
Looks like our last speaker will be Betty Krieger.
Okay. Betty, you have 3 minutes.
Betty Krieger here. I have a couple of comments. The commission was talking about that 89 Mount Shasta Boulevard I-5 intersection that's so problematic. That was discussed in 2019, and I was looking on my computer to see if I could find details on it, but I couldn't. And they, for some reason, decided that it wasn't a good idea, and I can't recall exactly the reasons for that. City council members may have information on that. You also mentioned bicycle repair tools for loan at the library. I'm on the Library Tax Advisory Committee, and I don't know how often you guys go to the library, but it's really, really packed in there. And school's in now, and when you go there, when the kids are out of school, there's a lot going on. I think they have a lot on their plate. And so we can address this at the next LTAC meeting in October, and maybe talk to the Friends of the Library about it and see, and perhaps even the group, I'm not on it, but there's a group, and I forget what it's called, a couple of city council members on it, a couple of LTAC members, and I think a couple of members from the community, or at least one. They could maybe speak to that too. Those are just suggestions. With regard to the roundabout and one-way streets, I am really against it. I sent in my comments, but one thing I would like to address that has not been addressed in the wonderful package that Alta did is the fact that Caltrans decides what's going to be done with historic highways. And Mount Shasta Boulevard is a historic Route 99 highway that gives access to both ends of egress and ingress to I-5. So I think before we spend a ton of money, or even think about spending a ton of money on something that in my opinion, is not needed, that's the first step. Going for grant money is like putting the cart before the horse. It was suggested last night at the city council meeting, Washington and Adams, to put a four-way stop there, but there's something problematic with regard to the wintertime. So I was driving down to Reading today, and near the Sweetbriar area, there's a road.
Thank you, Betty. Anybody else raise their hand expressing an interest? And I know we did get some emails, and they'll will be part of the record that we've received. Okay. I think we've got everybody, so I'm going to close the public input section, and now I'll go back. Commissioners. David, do you have some more to help us out with?
No, not a ton. I think Belinda's priority for the Seven Sons, Old Mcleod intersection area, that seems to me that it should have more priority than Castle and Pine. And there's not really any traffic on Castle Street, and I don't think people cross Pine Street at Castle Street. And I think per his recommendations, it was on Castle Street at Pine, which just seemed odd to me.
I'm with you on that.
And then the senior housing transportation, I know like where my grandparents live, the senior housing provides the transportation for their tenants or community to go do what they need to do if they need to go to Walmart or the grocery store or anything like that.
Where are they?
Reno.
Oh, that model.
But it should be, you know, I mean, it should be part of the, what, I don't know what you would call them, how, yeah, of living at a senior living facility. Not something that, not something that the city should have to provide.
But you see all of them walking on
Yeah.
Pine Street with their carts.
Yeah, they do walk. I mean, that'd be nice, but we, of course, we want to support.
And I think George Washington has transportation that's probably just not when they want to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay, thank you, David. Belinda?
I lost track. Oh, I just wanted to say, I travel a lot in the country, and I have become to love roundabouts.
Alan?
As do I. Properly placed and designed, I think they're great.
I also agree. Go ahead.
I made my comments. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Lon?
I too like roundabouts. I think in the process of looking at this whole proposal and presentation, that it's overwhelming. And I would like to see, I think there's just too many things trying to happen, you know, that could bog everything down. So what I'd rather see is maybe a 5 or 10 point at most of what of the top 5 or 10 things is that are reasonable to do, and deal with those
categories.
And eliminate like the last half of those pages?
I've perused through this whole thing 3 times, but I didn't quite, maybe because there's so much to take in. I would like to see, that's just my whole thing's just, I'd like to see just prioritize a little bit of time, get that done. We can put in grants that while that's being done for the next thing and go on. So something actually gets done instead of just getting.
Sometimes you need a menu because certain kind of funding opportunities are very specific. And if you don't have kind of some depth and breadth, you might not be able to.
Well, I get it. I get it. But even my original questions to him had to do with cost. So there's a method of my madness here.
Oh, keep going.
So get ready to close the loop here. With all of this going on and the time it would take, these numbers are going to be less and less relevant. And I mean, if you look at somebody who was trying to build a house last year and somebody trying to build a house this year, it's prohibitive. So my point is that maybe we just eat and I love elephants, just eat the elephant one piece at a time here, one bite at a time, and, you know, just take off the things we can chew, look forward ahead enough to apply for grants for some of these other things. And I understand what you're saying. But while that's going on, maybe nothing's happening. Saying, fight the battles you can win. That's all.
Okay. Did you have a question to Jeff around that?
No, I mean, what pages were you referring to?
Well, I was thinking like this.
I know there was a list.
That, we've got tables of intersection improvements, and we've got tables
That are
of
described, yeah.
bicycling improvements.
Right.
And we have table, you know, and they're allocated priority and, you know, categories of opportunities depending on if you're chasing a big grant, if you might have internal funds to take care of it.
Maybe
But
that
they
we
are
had
broken
to, we
into
had to start
individual
here to
projects.
create the Reader Digest form, because the books are big and.
Yeah, I think we should, there should be a Cliff Notes version of this, I guess.
Yeah,
Right.
and but you have to have the original in order to get the cliff. You don't start with the cliff. So this was a lot of information.
Is this another?
No question.
Is this another thing like the housing plan where it's like a state mandated thing where we have to come up with a walk, bike, transportation plan?
No, it's part of, I mean, it was originally part of our general plan. It was an implementation measure of a general plan. So because the city, in the general plan process, decided it was a priority, that's what initiated the plan we did, I don't know, 15, whatever it was, 2009, I guess? And then this is an update to that.
Gotcha.
Anything happened from that one?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good news.
We've got the Beat of Birch, we've got the striping up and down the Boulevard, up Alma. It made when Public Works projects were coming on, it recalibrated how they were approached, so it included active transportation and cars. So yeah, it was, I would say it was successful.
Handicap accessible access improvements made?
Oh, yeah, like down on Ida, yeah. That was, well, those are required, I think, also. So let me not completely.
And on this list, the prioritization list, how many of those things that would be something that people would immediately notice and benefit?
It depends on your neighborhood, right?
So that, these
But
are.
there are nasty spots, like you griped for a long time about that one sidewalk missing along, kind of near.
Right by her house and then up on Caroline.
Yeah.
Seems like that's something that has to get addressed in this package. I mean, you can't have kids walking in the street to go to school.
Well, mine did, thank goodness they survived.
Yeah, so my point is I think we would gain more support if we could have some immediate looking wins.
Well, I
Well,
think
they had some of that in here. He had like the striping of the sidewalks that haven't been being done, you know. So he had that as a priority, quick, immediate.
Smaller, immediate projects.
that we could fund with
Yeah,
the
that's
city
what I'm
project.
saying, so people could say, oh, okay,
Something's happening.
Something's happening.
yes.
Right, well, and I think that that's going to be part of the advisory committee, is if they're going to be, so I think an advantage of having a big menu is with council and with this advisory committee, they're going to say, we have an opportunity because, you know, some other, like we have an infrastructure project going on, right? We've got water lines, all of a sudden, well, concurrently, we could do this, and it's in the plan, because you have to have it in a plan to be able to do it.
Right, I get it.
Which is why you need more in the plan instead of less. I was involved in the development of the last plan, so I had practice. But I think your point is well made, very well made, that we want this to have visible results as quickly as possible.
That way you get support and you can do more. And you can hear good music
What?
whenever you're.
Is that watch duty?
Okay, and?
That was it for me.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, so I kind of will echo what Vaughn said. I got through this thing about 1.5 times and I had to speed read it, and I understand you have to have the encyclopedia before you cut down to the cliff notes, but it just seems like we are trying to do a lot. And so I would just have to agree that let's pick out the 5 or 10 most important things, concentrate on that. I'll segue over to this, particularly it seems like the bicycling part of this is contingent on us doing the one-way loop scenario. I don't see how we have enough room to do much more than what we already have if we keep the downtown area like it is and we don't decide to adopt the loop scenario. So you see, there was something else I had a question on in here. So anyway, yeah, and even if we were to do the loop, I don't see how the buffered bike lane or the bicycle boulevard could be implemented, again, because of lack of room. We'd only be able to do the bicycle lane class 2 and perhaps the separated bikeway class 4. Let me see if there's anything else. It was really tough for me to get through this and digest this. It was a lot. I sat by the pond at the hatchery for all last week trying to read through, well, not last week, but the end of last week and through the weekend trying to get through this. It was really tough for me. And there was a lot of redundancy in it, so I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying, for me to have cogent ideas and offer more intelligent questions, I have to be able to kind of soak it in, and it was just kind of difficult for me. So, but Belinda and Melanie and Vaughn, you guys had really good points, and so that's pretty much all I have to say. And the Highway 89, I actually witnessed a T-bone wreck there and had to pull 2 people out of a car that got T-boned and flipped over. And so it wasn't fun. So yeah, we need to do something about that. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to summarize. Jeff, even though I don't see you there, I assume you're out there somewhere taking notes. I guess I wanted to add oh, there you are. The 20-mile-an-hour speed limit suggestion as one of the recommendations, I wondered how putting up 20-mile-an-hour speed limit signs as opposed to actually putting in traffic slowing, calming, whatever the current idea is, infrastructure, how effective those 20-mile-an-hour speed limits really are if you don't do some physical adjustments to the
Speed bumps.
streetscape to make that happen.
Or something like that.
Chicanes, there's a lot of different things, narrowing the bump outs. So when you say there's a 20-mile-an-hour, suggesting the 20-mile-an-hour, does that also not include some infrastructure changes to the streets? Because I know my street, I live in Rockfellow, and in a couple blocks, people can pick up some speed, and they're not going to stop with a sign.
People don't seem to read signs around here.
I think it's a human thing. So,
They're
Jeff?
not going to do the 25. They're sure not going to do the 20.
Touche. Right. So, so I'm just wondering if that 20-mile-an-hour wouldn't that 20-mile-an-hour suggestion have a price tag to effectively implement it that's greater than just changing the signs?
I think doing it alone could have some benefit, but it's part of a suite of recommendations that include infrastructure changes as well.
What about those those Go scooters or something like that? You can just use it and park, and drop, and then somebody else picks it up and use it. Something like that people could kind of. There must be something. There's even in Tahoe they have those, but I'm just thinking that might be something that might help mobility for some people, but maybe there's a 3-wheel version or something for people that don't have good mobility. These, you're not burning gas, they're chargeable.
You're going to allow them on the sidewalks?
Yeah, those I think have some complications now.
Yeah.
People are
and there's a lot
Yeah, they do, but that's where you could police that 20 miles an hour thing. But I know, I'm sorry, I couldn't help it.
Put a governor on them.
But I do think that there's some sort of options, kind of drop and use options that might
But
be out
it's a
there.
very expensive process because you have to have the people that come along and collect them at the end of the day and then charge them all up and then put them back in their stands. You know, it's.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a private
Yeah, no,
enterprise
it
too,
is.
so somebody's gonna have to pencil out that our market makes
Don't
sense.
even have a planner yet.
So I don't think that, I don't know, we would only be able to.
So one thing I
do
wanted
that.
to add, though, we're talking about speed bumps weren't practical because of snow removal, but what if we did a drop of 2 inches like that?
I
So
think
you
that's,
drop in instead of hit a bump, and, because the plow is still going to go over the top of it, and it's going to be moot point in the winter anyway. Nobody in their right mind is going to exceed the speed limit if we ever get a berm down Mount Shasta Boulevard again in the foreseeable future, so.
right, so Jeff, to Paul's point, traffic calming, infrastructure, like he's saying, speed bumps, speed dips.
Bumps rather than the bumps.
And
You
I've
know,
seen
those big
actually
wide
for
ones.
plowing, instead of a sharp bump, a bigger, broader bump is another way to do it.
But you still slow down.
Your average car is not real happy about those, just so you know.
Well,
A lot
The
of
big
wear and tear
ones?
on vehicles.
No, not that the long ones are not a problem. The short ones, yes, but the long ones that are probably, I don't know,
They're 3 feet,
like
Yeah.
6
Like
feet long.
6, 5, yeah.
6.
Your average suspension isn't real happy
big.
about those.
Well, if you're going slow, it's not as big a
If
problem.
you're going slow enough, though.
So anyway, are those, I mean, in terms of
Oh, we
managing
had those in the
traffic,
presentation once.
are we addressing,
Maybe it was something I saw.
again, if we want to make roads safe for people, slowing cars down is a way to do that. And so how can we slow down the cars? To even get them to comply with the posted speed limits or slow them down? And is that part of our discussion?
It is on page 72.
I'm sorry, you were a little muddy. Can you repeat
Page
that?
Sorry, on
72.
page 72, it describes that.
All right, thank you. And then back to Lon's point about, is there going to be, or can you speak to a mechanism to pare down the list farther to address, or what will be our mechanism to prioritize these? Is this going to be with the advisory committee, or, again, speaking to Paul and Lon's concern about that there's a lot of projects and choices here, how do we winnow that down farther? And should we?
So 2 things, I think. As I described in the prioritization process, and I'm getting conflicting feedback from this planning commission, because you both want things that can be done quickly and cheaply, but you also want us to prioritize things that are going to require longer time, more study, more funding, such as the SR 89. So that I just want to point out there is a conflict between those two, and that's natural, and that's kind of happens with every plan, right? So if we've not done a good job of pointing out what we think as a community are the high priority, we need to go back and rechange the way that we prioritize those things. So I would direct this planning commission to table 17. Is table 17, which is the implementation strategy. Those are the very specific, detailed, time-oriented tasks that we've set out with responsible parties. Is that driving what you think the city should be spending its time on to implement this plan or not? And that's the feedback that I think I need.
Okay, what page is that on, table 17?
17.
Oh, it's page 17?
Or what?
No, table 17,
Is on what page?
it's on page, starts on page 134.
Okay.
Look at you.
Okay, well, maybe we'll, I think, commissioners, we still have opportunities for input, and maybe speak to these about your concerns would be helpful, if you can carve out some more time for that. Okay. Like I said, I had a question about, one of the crosswalk treatments to slow cars down and the flashing lights piece and lighting. And I just say, we actually do talk about dark skies in our town and protecting those. And then, of course, if you're in a residential area or if you have residences nearby and flashing lights, those might be a nuisance. And I just wanted to bring that up. And as a treatment, I don't know that I'd want one near my house, although I want people to slow down. So I think.
If it's an on-demand.
And possibly, you know, again, bright
I thought
lights
that
at
was
night.
what we talked about, is an on-demand crosswalk. Yeah.
I've seen, I know in Napa, where they have, in the Napa Valley, where I lived for quite a long time, they had lit up things built into the road.
San
You just push the
Francisco
button
does
and
it
they
too.
really get your attention. They're off, you know, like 30 seconds later, and boom, but it gets your attention, and it does slow you down.
No, and I appreciate that. But I also, as a biologist and bird lover, those things at night have complications and impacts to
There's less
bird
people
migration.
at night. They're crossing, there's less light.
No, I'm just saying if there's a downward facing or something. That is a concern I have.
They can be angled downward, and they can have blinders also put in them to reduce the glare in windows. And if there are locations where they're recommended that you think would be, that we should be removed, we're looking for that feedback as well.
Okay, I will look at that. So I don't know, is the next draft going to be in track changes? I love track changes.
I'm not sure that we will have the time to do a draft changes to meet the schedule for council adoption, October 24th.
So with the suggestions we made then what happens to the suggestions we made tonight?
The suggestions tonight will be included in with all the other comments we received from the public and from the TAC and from City Council at their information session. And then we'll work with city staff to pare down the ones that are feasible and make those corrections and those additions or changes to the version that's going to be presented to council on October 24th.
So these comments will be included, but you won't have changed the draft? That's what I'm confused about. And why wouldn't it be in track changes?
There will be a final plan for council adoption that will have public input factored into those changes.
Right.
But I cannot commit that all of your comments tonight are going to be in the final draft. That'll be a decision for city staff to work through.
No, that's fine, but I just was wondering if the draft would be in track changes so we could look at, and because it's hard to glean what's been changed.
Or if there's just a separate document.
An addendum.
Or what you've changed, or if there's an addendum. Sure, that'd be good. Something.
I think we can figure out a way to talk about the changes, or at least the pages with the changes.
It'd be easier to put together and also to disseminate out to the public.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful so that we know
what we talked about.
Right. So there's
specifically.
Right. So we can see what's been changed and what hasn't.
We're going to have to read this.
Right. Right. And then I guess my last comment is, can you increase the discussion about accessibility for mobility challenged, including seniors? That seems like we got a lot of input on that tonight that I think we need to focus on. Anything else? Okay, Jeff, do you have what you need from us?
I do, and if you have additional comments, I'm not sure what the best way to convey this, but I'll just say it verbally, is the website. You can go on and provide your comments through the PDF comment tool if you'd like to. In addition to what I've heard tonight, you can do that as an individual. There's also an email. You could send it if you would like to provide written comments. If you go to the website, that email is there, but it's info@walkbikeridemountshasta.com. It's all in the Contact Us section of the website. And you also can leave us a voicemail message if you'd like to provide your comments through voicemail, 530-230-3220. And it's all on the project website at walkbikeridemountshasta.com.
Lovely. And if anybody from the public didn't catch that, walkbikeridemountshasta.com is the place to go. And I'm sure
not .org.
And I'm sure there's a link on the city website. Yes?
I believe so, under the planning tab.
Under the planning tab. For those who didn't catch that, there's a way to, another way to get there. Okay, that is our agenda item tonight. And if there's no more comments, I'm going to adjourn until the next meeting, which is scheduled for Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. Thank you,
Jeff.
everyone. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time and interest. Thank you so much.
What
Not
kind of
very,
biologist?
it's an information, an information meeting, so
Is it out of control?
What kind of biologist?
Said they closed 97.
I'm a general.